It Won't Shut Up Unless I'm With You by YourlocalNBMess. Groaning, Chuuya moved his arm and swiped the alarm off. His head was pounding. It had been filled with screams all night, unwilling to let him get a second of sleep. Arahabaki was unwavering and very pissed. It didn't help that any time he closed his eyes, the worst images flooded in his mind. It was unwelcome, just like the screaming. It somehow got louder as he stood up. He yelped before he fell onto the ground, covering his ears. It did nothing to help. He knew this. He sighed and forced himself to stand on shaky feet. He used the wall for support as he grabbed onto his work clothes and headed towards the bathroom. He did his routine, albeit a bit slower than normal. Fuck, it's not normally this bad, he cursed, wincing as the bitter thought only added to the chaos in his already noise-filled brain. He grabbed a piece of bread, not bothering to even toast it as he grabbed the work bag and headed out the door. His face dropped to a stone-cold glare, even if he had to bite the inside of his cheek in order not to let his face screw up in pain. He knew better than to show any vulnerability in his line of work. After arriving at work, he was ordered to the boss's office. Sighing, he glared at the messenger, daring them to stay any longer than needed. Wisely, the man scurried away. He threw his bag across the room, then pulled a pack of cigarettes out and silently thanking the fact that he had a balcony. Walking out before he lit the stick, he inhaled deeply, then pushed the smoke back out, attempting to try and relax his shoulders. He failed, as Arahabaki still showed no signs of stopping. Finishing his cigarette rather quickly, he composed himself before walking to the elevator and going up to the top to meet with the boss. Chuuya knocked 2 times, paused, and tapped once more before entering the large room. Mori was shuffling papers around on his desk, reading them carefully. Boss, Chuuya bowed, removing his hat and placing it over his heart in respect. Ah, welcome, Chuuya, the boss acknowledged, allowing the other to stand once again. You called? Seems I did. Now as for why, I called you because there must be no records of this mission you'll be sent on, Mori started. Chuuya's eyes twitched as he tried to stand still and pay attention, but his hearing was failing him, legs wanting to give out as the pain from his head was spreading throughout his body. He felt his head swirling, like it was a ticking time bomb. Understood? Mori glared dangerously at the ginger. Yes, boss, he said confidently. Chuuya thinks he got the gist of it anyway. He was able to catch some of the sentences and managed to understand his goal and what the wanted outcome was. After a moment of silence, he left, him being excused being implied. It took only a few hours to complete the mission. When he got back, he relayed all the information back to Mori, knowing there would be no report in respect of the whole no records aspect of this. Mori said nothing about how it took longer than it should have, but considering the aura in the room, he could tell the boss was not happy with him. Making the trip as fast as possible, he left the room and headed to his office. He's been behind in his work lately. That's not typical for the ginger, although the boss has been pushing him back to back with outings. Lighting another cigarette, not bothering anymore with the fact he was inside, he pulled the ashtray closer to himself and started to fill out papers while researching any needed information on his laptop. Suddenly, he bit down on his tongue, his breath speeding up as Arahabaki let out a scream louder than the rest. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut the fuck up, he begged in his head as he covered his ears once again, pulling on them, and his hair. Fucking shut up! He slammed one of his hands onto his desk, tears pooling in the corner of his eyes no matter how much he tried to will them away. After a while, the noise calmed down so he could think clearly enough to be able to see. He looked with blurry vision, before starting work once again, ignoring the fact that he was still in agonizing pain. If Chuuya was able to work, even just a little bit, he would be. Once it was 3 a.m., he shoved his belongings messily into his bag. He wobbled, side to side, eyes hazing and face sour. He couldn't care that he had barely got through his stack of work. Remembering where he was hard enough, and he was pissed off to no end. He just wanted the goddamn noise to stop, but it was still as loud as it had been the previous night. One would think the god inside him would get tired even sometimes, but it was the opposite. The more it screamed, the more energy it seemed to gain. He took a step and collapsed onto the ground by his door. He shivered, lying there, for a bit before standing up with a whimper, caught in the back of his throat. Not letting it slip out, he slammed the door open, wincing at the extra noise it caused. The anger caused by the pain was strong, though. He stomped down the hallway and rode the elevator to the ground level and tried his best not to stumble or show any pain, although failing slightly. All he did was look at the people who even dared to glance at him and set everyone straight. He hopped on his motorcycle, ignoring the fact that it had been one of the worst ideas he had had in a while. He just wanted to get home so he could get wasted and attempt to shut this fucking thing up. Once he got inside his home, that is exactly what happened. He grabbed wine and vodka, not wanting to wait for the wine to hit him, and decided on a few shots to get him started. Normally he wouldn't, but tonight was anything but normal. He drank straight from the bottle before coughing at the strong taste. It only made him choke more, like he had something to prove. The strain of alcohol was little compared to the rest of the pain in his body, so he only stopped once he needed to breathe. Admittedly, not his smartest idea. His already low tolerance made itself clear, but he smiled as the screams ever so slightly quieted. It wasn't a big difference, but it was better than no change at all. Pouring a glass of wine this time, he let himself slowly sip on it as he stared at a wall, wishing all the pain away. Tears fell down his face as he felt the alcohol fade away, and it was replaced by Arahabaki, becoming even louder than it had been in his lifetime. The hangover made his head feel like it was being split open into 12 different parts. A scream ripped from his throat. He didn't even know he was letting out blood-curdling screams. His hearing was completely blocked by pure torture, leaving him shaking violently on the couch, curled into a ball. Adrenaline hit him after an unknown amount of time, pushing him to his feet. He had managed to get his screaming to stop. Booking it out of his house, he let his panicked mind run to the only place he could get it to stop. He just needed it to stop. His body wouldn't let him pass out, no matter how much pain he was in. No matter how much he cried and screamed, he was cursed. Forever fucking cursed with constant yells and headaches. Cursed to endure the feeling of Arahabaki as it claws him from the inside, trying to get out, to gain control and cause destruction. He looked up, and he was outside a brick building, spotty vision unable to hide the red material. He let out a sob of relief as he slammed the door open, looking around, and sprinted into the room where he knew the thing he was looking for would be. Slamming the door open as well, a snap was heard as the door was now split and in danger of breaking in two. Pupils blown wide as he looked desperately for a brunette not registering the amount of eyes on him, and the weapons pointed at him dangerously. Dazai. Where the fuck is he? Chuuya thought, dropping to the floor. He threw his hands back to his ears and let out another blood-curdling scream, forcing the agency members to cover their own ears and wince. The others were now taking in the appearance of the mafia executive. The normally perfect attire was askew. Half of it was missing. The ginger was sweating profusely, hair matted and messy. He wore no shoes. Face swollen and red like never seen before. Dark eye bags under his eyes, left shaking on the agency floor. Chuuya was the definition of a mess. It took about 5 seconds before Dazai rushed into the room with a never-before-seen panic. Just as the mafioso screamed again, Dazai grabbed onto Chuuya, pulling him into his chest. The members watched as the ginger simply passed out with a touch. Dazai's pupils also widened, and he breathed unevenly. He pulled the other up as he stood, and grabbed the paper towel from off his desk, having been placed there after Atsushi spilt water just a bit prior. Dazai wiped the blood everyone had seemed to miss that was spilling from Chuuya's ears. The most concerning thing was the blood falling from his eyes in place of tears. Everyone watched Dazai as he carefully, cleaned up the blood from off their enemy, with a specific softness and care in every move, making sure that he never stopped touching the other. "What the fuck was that?" Yoshino asked, as she decided to break the ice with the question everyone had been thinking. Surprisingly, even Rampo was staring and waiting for an answer to piece all the information together. Dazai sighed and threw the bloody paper towels in the trash bin next to him, and once again pulled Chuuya up with him safely in his arms. Pointedly ignoring his co-workers, he strolled over to one of the sofas and laid Chuuya on his lap and combed through his hair, humming softly, a song no one in the room had heard before. "Dazai, don't just ignore us," Kunakita squawked. Dazai kept his head down, but glared up and stared at Kunakita with a poisonous look, causing said person to get goosebumps. "I dare you to wake him up," Dazai threatened. Kunakita just gawked as he watched the brunette turn back to the gravity manipulator and continue humming. That was until Atsushi pulled the elder away. They all decided to just work quietly, not wanting whatever they saw from Dazai to happen again. Peeling his eyes open, tears filled his vision once again. Pain flooded his entire body. He didn't even notice the fact that the screaming in his head was gone as he covered his face from the light. He whined as tears fell from his face, eyes burning, already dehydrated from his crying earlier. Chuuya only froze as he heard someone bark a command from his right next to him. After this realization, he tried to get his eyes open to look straight and understand what was happening. He grew frustrated as his body wouldn't listen, fear only growing. He still had no clue where he was. "Shh. It's all right, Chibi." The same person who commanded just seconds before was now rubbing his temples and whispering softly. He couldn't help but relax and lean into the touch. It was easing the pain away, and whether he wanted the comfort or not, the moment of silence was eternal bliss. Wait, silence? That doesn't happen. His eyes snapped open and looked at the blurry figure above him as his eyes cleared. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding when he realized it was Dazai. Of course it was Dazai. No one else was capable of making his world quiet. He sighed and turned onto his side before curling into the taller, the room now dark. "Chibi, I need to make sure you're okay before you sleep again," Dazai told him softly, still rubbing one of his temples. Okay," he hummed. He tried to sleep yet again, but that only earned him a light laugh. "No, we need to check if you're hurt and you need water." Dazai tapped his other hand on Chuuya's arm. He groaned unhappily, but allowed himself to be pulled up carefully, so he was now leaning onto Dazai instead of laying on him. He squeezed his eyes closed tightly as his head began to pound and his vision became spotty. He put his head into his hands, waiting for the pain to stop. "Yoshino?" Dazai called across the room where said doctor was whispering to Kyoka. "Yes?" she answered hesitantly, before seeing that Chuuya was sitting up as well. Well, attempting to. Chuuya was completely leaning onto Dazai, and looked like he would pass out any second. "Have any pills to help with migraines?" he asked, knowing full well she did. Nodding silently, she walked off before returning with 2 pills and a bottle of water. "Here." Dazai took the items and gave a soft smile, the first she had seen since the incident. "Thank you." She, as well as everyone else in the room, watched as Dazai turned to Chuuya and carefully ran his hand through red locks and watched said man flinch before completely relaxing and pulling his hands away from his face. Dazai looked and identified the pills before placing them into Chuuya's hands. "Take," he told him softly. They watched in pure shock as his eyes never opened to check what the medication was. Typically, the short man was suspicious of everything, and double-checking anything given to him, no matter the item. A subconscious task at this point. Then here, he was not even bothering to open his eyes from something that Dazai had given him. The brunette wiped a stray tear away before checking over the other. He worked quietly, and Chuuya started to grow more aggravated. "I know, just let me check your ears. Also, you're eating saltines when you wake up," Dazai said, before turning his flashlight on his phone and looking into them. Frowning, he sighed. Chuuya. At that, the ginger laid down, ignoring the tone. Chuuya, Dazai repeated unhappily. You said ears, then sleep. Fine. We will be talking about this. Dazai caved and started combing through red locks. It only took seconds for him to pass out. Yosuno took a step towards the pair. Okay, can you tell us anything? We are all extremely lost. Dazai looked daggers into the doctor's eyes as she walked forward, making her step back once again. I can't say much really, he finally answered. What can you say? She pushed. Dazai thought for a minute. He has a strong ability. Technically, that wasn't a lie, just not the full truth. He wasn't about to explain that Chuuya was a vessel holding the rage of a literal god inside of him. Is that why you won't let go of him? Why did you get angry after looking in his ears? Because he's been like this for at least 48 hours, he answered bitterly. Everyone paused at this. You mean over 2 days? Atsushi asked. That's what I said. Dazai sighed. It's 5 p.m. now. Work is over, he declared to everyone in the room. He was not hiding the fact that he wanted them gone, that they were not allowed near him or the man in his lap. He was clear that he was done answering questions as well. Everyone listened and went back to doing their own things, still being quite unwilling to find out what would happen if they woke Chuuya. Speaking of which, Dazai moved Chuuya so he was draped over his back and carefully was carried out of the building without a word. The next time Chuuya woke up, he only had a light headache. His body still sore, though. He clung to the warmth next to him, already knowing what it was and soaking in the moment of calm. Come on, sleepyhead. You need food and water, or you might just shrink up more without it, Dazai teased. Shut up, Mackerel, he slurred. He was pulled closer into a hug and sighed into Dazai's neck. Thank you. Next time, don't wait till it's that bad, he demanded. It was really fucking bad this time, Chu. I tried. It just wouldn't stop, Chuuya whispered. He rubbed Chuuya's back. I know. It wouldn't shut up, it wouldn't stop, so I drank. It helped a small bit, but then it wore off. Tears burned into his eyes. It's never been so fucking loud, Samo. Dazai felt his heart shatter. I'm here now, the taller promised, and kissed Chuuya's forehead softly. I love you, Chuuya mumbled as he kissed the other. This caused the other to freeze, eyes wide, until he relaxed and kissed back. Once they pulled away, Chuuya's head rested on the other's chest, listening to his heartbeat that was abnormally fast. I love you too. He smiled at the other, even if he couldn't see it. His eyes betrayed how much adoration he held for the man he held close to him. You know, sometimes I forget that there are stories or fics out there where the characters don't suffer. I mean, this isn't one of them, but you know.